playing Green Devotion on the left, how this is going to break down. Can't forget
this is a deck with a lot of graveyard synergies as well.
Andersen did make the top 8 of our Season 1 Invitational earlier this year, too, with Green-White Devotion. So we will be underway here in just a moment as an island there from Vetter will begin round number 6. For Andersen, he'll start with the Wooded Foothills. He'll be searching up a land. He'll get himself a forest. Elvish Mystic. And a passing of the turn. It's a mana confluence. Vetter going to go down to 19.
4 of those bad boys in here.
Yeah, that's not much of a surprise. There's a Satyr Wayfinder. Let's take a look at the top 4. It's a Swamp, a Frontier Bivouac, a Satyr Wayfinder, and a Sylvan Caryatid. Get to take one of those lands with him. He'll go with the Swamp Wolf Veteran. He'll pass the turn back over to Andersen. Force the draw. Andersen known for playing his lands in front of his spells.
We had Jeff Hoagland on camera earlier.
Yes. Real divide in the community about this. Your thoughts, Mr. Sullivan?
Unacceptable.
Okay. I had a feeling that's where you stood, but I just wanted to confirm. Here's a Commune with the Gods. We've got a Hero's Downfall, a Torrent Elemental, a Kolaghan's Command, a Satyr Wayfinder, and a Slumguard. There's nothing he can't do.
The sampler.
Indeed. Welcome to Applebee's. Here is Satyr Wayfinder.
No, we need more stuff in the graveyard. That's what we're going for here.
An Opulent Palace at the passing of the turn. Andersen will take a draw step. Picks up a copy of Wishboat Elemental.
My opinion is the cards with the pertinent text boxes are the ones that should be easiest for your opponent to see. So I like the spells being closer to the opponent.
I see. Here comes Deathmist Raptor. The follow-up is a Courser of Crewfix. Take a look at that top card. It's a Wooded Foothills. Trigger. That'll gain Andersen a life from the Courser. Take a look at that next card, which is a Rugged Highlands. We'll go back Vetter's way. Chris has to be wondering what the heck is he setting up for. This Chromanta Flare deck is not terribly popular. And we haven't seen any of the pieces just yet. There's another Satyr Wayfinder. Sidisi, Farika, Murderous Cut, Tassiger. None of those are lands. Vetter does have a couple of lands in hand. There's a Swamp, so he's doing okay. He's building a really, really large graveyard, too. The question is, does he have Soul Flare or Chromatic in hand?
And needs one of his payoff cards. He's looked at a lot of them.
Manic Influence going to deal a point of damage. I think maybe a Soul Flare might be on the way. You can see how he is separating what he wants to delve. And it wouldn't surprise me, actually, for Evan if this is actually a pretty good matchup for him, because the Devotion deck is really just kind of doing one thing, which is just to work its way towards a really big threat. Yep, there's Soul Flare.
All right.
So it has Flying. It has Death Touch. Perhaps a couple other things as well. Didn't get a great look at the cards that were exiled by Vetter. We know Flying and Death Touch for sure. No lifelink just yet. Andersen going to sacrifice his Wooded Foothills. He'll stay at the same life total. Of course, Courser will gain him a life back from a life that he lost. But here you see Soul Flare and what this thing can do. If you exile with Soul Flare's Delve ability, Soul Flare has Flying. The same is true of First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance.
This is a sweet design.
I actually think this card's really cool.
I'm a big fan of Delve cards that are not just, hey, just dump over your cards in your graveyard. Doesn't matter how. Find your thought scours. More of a deck building puzzle. You care much more about what cards are in your graveyard. Sweet design.
Good shuffle on the upkeep, Chris.
Yep.
Tried to shuffle a Rugged Highlands, but it showed up anyway. Forest on top of the deck now. Look, if Rugged Highlands wants to hang out, it's going to hang out.
Yeah. So now Chris probably has a bit of a sense of what he's playing against.
Well, there's really only one deck that does this, right?
Yeah.
Hornet Queen on top.
Round one is going up in the back of the room.
Andersen going to tap some mana here. Might be time for the old Whisperwood. Could be time for Blue Kronos instead. Maybe he wants to draw the Hornet Queen.
I think so too. You don't quite know what's going on in Evan's deck, but the game's gone on for a pretty long time. It's got a flyer in play. You got the mana to work with. Hornet Queen seems like a nice draw, so I like Chris just playing the Blue Kronos instead.
Vetter will untap and take a draw here. Picked up a copy of Sansep Citadel. Mana base is working out pretty well for Evan so far. That Chromanticore will not be difficult to actually bestow onto the Soul Flare. Just unclear if he has one in his hand at this point, that's all. We saw some players try this at the Pro Tour as well. Jamie Parks, V. Maushevitz. Here's some manas. There's a Farika, God of Affliction. Pass the turn back with an activation at the ready. And it actually doesn't take too much to actually awaken Farika at this point. Only 2 more Devotion. Hornet Queen the draw here for Andersen.
I think Nykthos in hand too, so potentially a very explosive turn on Chris's side of the table. You get the sense that even with Evan doing all this, right now this is at a power level that Chris can manage with the cards he's got available to him. A lot of cards in hand as well.
Might be Nykthos time. Might be big mana time. Yep, there's Nykthos.
7 green mana symbols in play on Chris's side of the table, so.
This is something actually Chris is pretty familiar with doing. It's actually really in his wheelhouse as far as being a player is concerned. He plays a lot of Elves and Legacy, which generates a lot of mana. And then, of course, with his top 8 of the Season 1 Invitational with Green-White Devotion and Master of the Unseen, you had to make a lot of weird mana with that deck, too. Here's a Hornet Queen. 4 insects will be coming here for Andersen in just a moment.
I think for coverage, the next thing we need now is the Soul Flare keyword tabs.
I can see that.
Track what that bad boy's got going on.
Yeah. Could be bad news if it gets it all.
Sure.
There won't be enough space then. Maybe just a Soul Flare. You know what? We should just dedicate a Soul Flare overlay.
Right.
Just to the card. Really show our love for it.
Right. Well,
Probably won't get used very much, but you got to come prepared for these sort of things.
Absolutely.
Deathless Raptor coming in the red zone. Seder Wayfinder going to chump block. Now Vetter will move that. Get a little snake. Now Vetter will draw. Copy of Frontier Bivouac. Does have a copy of Hero's Downfall in hand.
I believe also an exiled Torn Elemental.
Yes, he did. From the Soul Flare.
And potentially a valuable card for Evan in this match because it looks like attacking is just becoming more and more challenging, especially with Chris having all the cards in his hand that he does. So Torn Elementals tap all opposing creatures' claws could be valuable here.
This is one of my favorite cards from that set.
It's a weirdo.
That's kind of why I like it. I also just kind of like Cyclones like that. Like they're just, I don't know why I like Cyclones so much, but I do. It's just my own personal thing.
Okay.
And it's got a cool picture. I can just see it just eating everything. It's like a big tornado. Big fan. Big fan.
I'm not a huge fan of the naming convention of X Elemental, where the X is not an element.
Okay.
War Elemental possibly being the biggest of it.
One of my favorite ones, actually. That's actually one of my favorite ones.
But this is a cool design.
Once again, Modern Challenge. Next round carries are up.
I especially like War Elemental because it's very bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Card's a delight.
Chris, looking at some mana here. Gonna go with Death Mist Raptor. Looks like 12 mana here from Nykthos. Yeah, this is a pretty big turn.
I think part of this is Chris just does not quite know exactly what's going on the other side of the table. So best case scenario here is just dump out all your stuff and try to go around Farika and the creatures that are on defense.
I'm okay with this approach.
Especially
Just get a bunch of stuff on the table.
Get second Pelucranos as a consolation prize. So if Evan makes any sort of move, you can always use your Pelucranos in play or unmorph the manifested one, blow up his board.
There's your hero's downfall before manifesting will occur. Now it's time for a Murderer's Cut as well. Yep. So some removal spells have been cast here by Vetter. He does get to use his graveyard as a resource quite a bit with this deck. See both players. A little discussion back and forth on the timing of this, I think.
Right, I mean, Evan moved pretty fast with the 2 removal spells there, and Chris might be arguing, well, I wanted to sack 1, and, you know, Evan can always respond with another removal spell, so it doesn't really matter.
Yep.
But
Evan will draw. Looks like another copy of Soul Flare has been added to the grip.
fortunately, not a lot of goodies in the graveyard in terms of grafting keywords, just a flyer.
It's time to bring back the Torn Elemental. When you do cast from Exile, it does enter the battlefield tapped, so that gives Vetter something to do on this turn. Andersen going to draw a copy of Pelucranos. Top card of the deck is a Genesis Hydra. That's a nice one. And Pelucranos really no slouch here either.
Yeah, if I'm Chris, I'm looking to make some inroads onto the board this turn. Evan's representing the ability to turn on Devotion to Farika, and with Torn Elemental, could cobble together a pretty big attack. So it wouldn't surprise me if Chris has used this opportunity to Pelucranos away a lot of his board. He also just might have lethal.
Chris doing the math on exactly how much mana he can generate. He can fight for a whole lot here and get some stuff off the table. Also, Farika only has 1 mana available at this point, so
yeah.
Vetter can't make a snake token inside of combat. I think Chris knows that, so he's going to come into the red zone here. Say, do your worst. We'll see how Vetter wants to block. Looks like the snake token is going to jump in front of Pelucranos.
That's the easy block.
That's probably the most straightforward of the bunch, yeah. Soul Flare might be getting in front of Deathness Raptor. Looks like that one wants to block on Pelucranos too. But Vetter's in some serious trouble here. Andersen's board is pretty nice.
Yeah, this was Chris's plan here. As long as Evan's not going to sit here and do very much, Chris can go ahead, develop his board. He always has the option of Pelucranosing if Evan tries to do something crazy with creatures, and he can go around the board that Evan's trying to set up, which is basically what we've seen over the last couple of turns.
Yep. Chris will lose some stuff here. Looks like Hornet Queen was blocked by Soul Flare. Either way, some nice work done. And now a passing of the turn. As Vetter's down to 3. Looks like it might be time here for Vetter to play a Commune with the Gods.
This is going to be tough to get out of. Chris has so many individual attackers against very little board.
Not able
that
to,
Commune offered no help.
Yeah, not able to find a Chromanticore there at all.
Evan's gone through a lot of his deck.
He has. And he plays 4 Chromanticores, so it's a little surprising he wasn't able to find one just yet this game. So perhaps we'll see that winning combination of Soul Flare and Chromanticore come to fruition in the next game, but certainly not this one, as Chris Andersen's able to win game number 1 over Evan Vetter, Green-Red Devotion, up a game here over Chromantiflare as we get ready for the sideboarded games. We will start with Vetter, and I'm really hoping for some spice on the board.
Copy of Soul Tide Charm, a Torn Elemental, a Radiant Purge, a Thoughtseize, a Silence of Believers, 2 Feed the Clan, 2 copies of Mistcutter Hydra, 3 Drowned Sorrows, 3 Disdainful Strokes. I like the stuff that's good at fighting Chris's big payoff cards. The 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, the Soul Tide Charm, and the Silence of Believers. I also think the extra copy of Torn Elemental pretty well suited for this matchup because Chris's deck is so effective at blocking.
Other side of things here for Mr. Andersen. He's got New England Spirit Dragon, Arbor Colossus, a Windstorm, 2 Plummets, 3 Den Protectors, 3 Hornet Nest, 2 Roast, and then 2 Nissa Worldwaker.
I would just settle in for a long game. I would bring in the 2 copies of Nissa, the copy of Ugin, and possibly some of the anti-flying measures as you see in Soul Flare. So I don't exactly know how much or what balance of that stuff Chris wants, but I could see him bringing some of his anti-flyer measures. Saw a lot of dragons too. Windstorm's probably the safest card to bring in, but you might see the plummets.
Well. We'll see how both players do sideboard here, but very quickly, we'll talk about the Star City Games newsletter. It's been revamped. It's your source for Magic the Gathering news, and it's pretty easy to sign up for, too.
Yeah, it is free, and you can head over to starcitygames.com/newsletter to sign up. You get basically a condensed set of information about articles that have been posted, the best match from the Open Series, summarizing the upcoming events, an exclusive cardboard crack comic. You get deck lists, advice from some of your favorite premium writers like Todd Andersen, Brad Nelson, Brian Bronduin. Again, free to sign up. Head over to starcitygames.com/newsletter. Get signed up right now.
Chris Andersen, the Indianapolis local, lives about 20 minutes from here, actually. Good friend of mine, used to rock the PTQs all weekend long back in the mid-2000s, and he was much younger then. But he was the
We all were.
He was the very true.
That's how that works.
He was the driver. I was the sleeper in the car. I was the bad guy.
Yep.
I was the bad guy.
You wouldn't have been allowed to travel with me.
I just can't go.
If you don't drive or generate conversation to keep the driver awake and engaged, yeah, you wouldn't be allowed to come. Because your slot in the car could just be filled by someone who could fit one or more of those requirements.
I can generate something. It depends on what the conversation is.
You just said you immediately fell asleep. That's just
Most times.
very self-serving.
Well, I stayed up playing Magic Online all night before the PTQ.
Nice.
So it's not really my fault. So I was getting ready for the PTQ. And then I sleep on the way to the PTQ, and then I play in the PTQ.
You wouldn't have been able to travel with us.
All right.
You've been cut out.
It's a different person then.
Yep.
Again,
we all were.
Lot of Magic Online. Those were the days.
Been throwing my hat back in the ring. Big Dan Teague starting to get a little
Yeah,
active.
so I've heard. You've been dialing up the old MTGO recently, huh?
Yes, I have.
Dusted off the old Modern Burn deck.
I found out that I actually own the cards, which is a big help.
It's good that you just stay to your roots. Just go back to just burning people no matter the format. You're not going to change.
I didn't own the cards. I had to get 2 copies of Deflecting Palm. They were 4 cents a piece, and I'm likely to cut them from the deck. But otherwise, I had the deck.
It's a good buy.
Yeah.
But hold on to those.
Because you never know.
Yeah, those could really
A
move
quarter
up.
one day. Who knows?
You're basically rich. Deflecting Palm no good?
It's been okay. People on Magic Online just can't afford to build Jund. Just no one has the deck,
It's probably pretty
So
expensive,
expensive.
actually. Yeah, that actually makes sense. I know how much Tarmogoyfs are in real life. They're probably pretty expensive on Magic Online, too. Looks like Vetter's going to take a mulligan. Something his deck probably does a little bit.
I got a Deflecting Palm, Raging Ravine's pretty sweet. Worm Coil Engine's pretty sweet.
Do you make a hand motion when you get someone with the palm, like the picture? Because I would do it every time.
Most of the time that I'm playing Magic Online, I am just in my boxers screaming obscenities.
Well, that
uses up all of my trash talking equity.
that is a sharing violation. No one wanted to know that.
Yeah. Well, you asked. So no, I'm not making a palm gesture because I'm just too focused screaming at the top of my lungs. So get to Magic Online. You get to imagine your opponent as your least favorite person.
You sure do.
Because there's no humanity there. They're just an object on the other side of the screen.
They're trying to prevent you from winning.
They're just someone who's putting a ley line into play on turn 0, you know?
Vetter can only pass on turn number 2. No second land. Though it looks like he kept the hand with Seder Wayfinder. So if he's able to draw a land, he could probably work himself out of this pretty quickly.
Yeah. Speculative keep, hoping that Chris has one of those slower hands.
It doesn't appear to be slow here for Andersen, though, with an Elvish Mystic to start things off. A Temple of Abandon and a Forest of the Lands. You see him scrying the top card to the bottom. A little more acceleration there in carry added. Pass the turn back. Vetter did draw a land. It's an island. There's your Wayfinder. Couple of cards here, Chromanticore among them.
The secret is revealed.
Yeah, if Chris didn't know before, he certainly knows now. This is what we're up to. Not looking to play particularly fair.
Well, with Evan stumbling and now on 2 copies of Mana Confluence for his lands, I think Chris is just going to try to go as aggressive as possible.
Which I think is smart. An Elvish Mystic of Pelukrinos passing of the turn. That's what Andersen's got. Oh, it's Soul Flare time. Oh, daddy.
Oh, combo deck.
Oh, daddy. Chris wants to know exactly what the Soul Flare can do, which means we need to take a look at Chromanticore.
So that's all of them, pretty much.
Yeah.
Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink. Not a bad deal for 2 mana.
I've seen worse. Your turn. Not bad, Evan Vetter. Not bad.
Chris can just still beat this with a lot of mana, though. There's no Death Touch here. So Pelukrinos is still a solid answer.
Yep. Here's 6 mana. Genesis Hydra for 4. Let's take a look at the top 4 cards here for Andersen. Xenagos, Forest, Death Misraptor. Those are the options here for the Green-Red Devotion player. Chris is going to take a look at his hand. He's got Dragon Lord Tarka hanging out over there among the options. Giving it a long thought is Andersen.
Well, Xenagos is a real prize here because I think Chris is in the market for mana more than anything else. He's got Pelukrinos and Dragon Lord Tarka in hand. Unfortunately, Xenagos just dies. There is the hope that Evan just decides to race here. He takes Xenagos and then Chris can really do a lot of work with the burst of mana. But I think he's just going to err on the side of a more conservative play here and keep the Death Misraptor that he actually gets to keep permanently.
I think the decision making here is that if Evan wants to attack, I mean, I guess he's just going to get to attack anyway because of all the text on the Chromanticore. So he just needs to build probably just a wider board.
Right. You know, the argument there for taking Xenagos is there's some chance Evan doesn't attack Xenagos next turn and then you go crazy the following turn, but that's asking a lot.
That seems rather unlikely.
Exactly. So, but it's at least worth giving it some thought there, and that's what Chris did.
Commune with the Gods. Vetter has to take 1 to cast it thanks to the Mana Confluence. A Polluted Delta, a Sandsep Citadel. Another Delta, an Opulent Palace. What it is a bunch of things he doesn't get to choose from.
It's 5 lands.
Yeah. Unfortunate for him.
Particularly painful while missing land drops.
Yeah, not great. Here comes Soul Flare. Another Mana Confluence. Pass the turn back. Andersen will take a draw, so we're all tied up life-wise. Then he goes to the draw. Not bad. Looks like Pelukrinos is coming in. That's the first order of business. But now it looks like a Murderous Cut's going to slow that down. Vetter going to have to take 1 to play the cut. But he gets the Pelukrinos off the board. The follow-up is a Xenagos. Starts on 3. We could see it move up to 4, and we will, which means it'll add 5 mana. There's a Dragon Lord of Tarka. And all you can do is pass the turn back.
There's been some problems in these games where Evan has kind of gotten to do his thing, but it hasn't been significantly more powerful than what Chris has been doing. And
Yeah.
Chris's action is much smoother, much more consistent.
Well, Vetter got off to a nice start after some issues. Now he's got to slow down, unfortunately, because Atarka, well, she is pretty large. She does not mess around either. Hornet Queen the draw now.
And Chris has just got so much in the way of leftovers, too. Genesis, Hydra, Den Protector. Really good stuff left over.
Den Protector, oddly enough, might be the best of those cards.
Hornet Queen,
Yeah,
really potent hand.
this is no joke. Xenagos moving up. Looks like it's time for Queen B. Now they're joined by 4 insects, of course. The Xenagos is only getting better as it goes. And a lot of people who have written about this deck have just said that Xenagos is maybe the best card in the deck.
Well, it seems so important in a number of respects. It gives the deck some staying power against sweepers, which is a big vulnerability. It gives it a pretty explosive play when you have mana acceleration. And then it acts as additional copies of Nykthos when the game drags out. Really powerful in a number of ways.
It's always unique to me that when it comes to Xenagos, it's a Planeswalker where we've seen its ultimate here on SCG Live maybe twice. It never really works its way into the equation.
It's very rare.
Yeah. For a Planeswalker that can stick around that long to never really see its ultimate. There's Sultai Charm. Vetter going to draw 2 cards, have to discard 1.
Well, the thing is, when you're plussing Xenagos and your opponent can't attack it, it usually means you're doing outlandish things with a whole lot of mana, and most opponents just can't stay alive that long.
Yeah. It's really true.
Because if you're under the gun, you're making tokens, and if you're not, then you're generating 15 mana and casting 15 mana worth of spells.
Yeah, doing something ridiculous with Genesis Hydra or Pelucranos. There's a Sandsep Citadel. Soul Flare, you want to come into the red zone? If you do, where do you even want to go? Can't kill Xenagos now.
Watching these two games, now Evan has caught some bad breaks here, but he's definitely not as fast or consistent as Chris, and it's not clear to me his top end's even better.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with the Chromantic Flare deck. I thought he might be able to get an advantage because of the flyer, because flying is so good against him, as we saw earlier in the tournament. But, he was able to play a Soul Flare delving away a Chromanticore, which is really what the deck's trying to do. And it looks like he might even be doing that again. But it hasn't really led him anywhere, because Chris has been able to do some pretty powerful things in the meantime. There's another Soul Flare.
I mean, if you're going to sit around against Devotion, you better be sweeping them or locking them out of the game somehow when you get to your top end. If you're just casting creatures, that's not going to cut it.
And going blow for blow.
Yeah, can't hang that way.
Looks like a Wooded Foothills maybe in the draw for Andersen this turn. See, life total 16-8 in favor of Andersen now. And Chris can just keep setting up and continue to maybe go wide or play this Genesis Hydra finally and see if he's able to hit something. And we can't forget about the Den Protector in hand, too.
Yep. With the amount of mana that Chris is working with, Den Protector back to Pelucranos and try to shoot the moon next turn is something that's important. He's got a lot of good lines here. And a lot of mana to work with.
Yeah. The only thing he's really missing from the puzzle is a card like Nykthos, as far as mana is concerned. And
Xenagos is worth 10 right now, I think.
yeah,
If my count's right. So that's a lot.
actually 11. You came up one short.
My bad. It's a lot. It's a lot of mana to work with.
Andersen down to 15 from the fetch land. Maybe a little Genesis Hydra for Chris, or he's going to go with Den Protector face down. It'll be 12 mana that's added.
I believe this is enough to get back Pelucranos and fight one of the Soul Flayers.
It might be. You see, this is the thing about Devotion, is you got to do all this math to make sure you can do all the places you want to
So
make.
he has 12 mana, he goes down to 10. Casting the Pelucranos drops him down to 6. And he's already tapped 3 lands, so he's got 9 left over, which I assume is Pelucranos fighting one of the Soul Flayers.
So I think, yep. He found it. You found it. Evan Vetter just experienced it. Oh, we'll see if Chris wants to get in the red zone. Looks like old Tarka is interested in flying on over. Tarka is just obnoxiously large.
It's so 8/8 is just a lot for 7 mana.
You really just get no time to fight back. You have to find an answer to that card
Well,
immediately.
the time you got was the turns leading up to Dragon Lord Tarka.
That's true.
Not winning a lot of games when it resolves if the text box is relevant, but you gotta do your work up front.
Chris employing a little encroachment here.
Oh yeah, I like it.
Starting to take over the battlefield here with all of his permanents. An Insect Token's going to block the Soul Flare. Vetter's going to go up to 8. That Soul Flare has a lot of different things going on right now. Flying First Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink.
No trample, no death touch.
Yep. There's Chromanticore. Back to Andersen. Wooded Foothills to draw. Genesis Hydra at the ready.
Oh!
We're
Here we
cashing
go.
it in? Yes. It's so rare, Elvish Mystic. Dragon Lord of Tarka, Pelucranos. Can't see it. Can't see it. Can't see it. That's all right. He'll move him. I know he will. Or they might just all enter the battlefield. Yeah, there's a course of Crewfix among them. My goodness, are those all hits? Yep.
This deck doesn't have a lot of misses.
That's true.
It's just, the deck's basically creatures and lands.
Yeah, could we play a Tarka? Yep. Fire away, kill. I've seen worse turns.
Yep.
Exile the top 7 cards of your library. If any number of creature or land fields among them onto the battlefield, that means enter the battlefield triggers do work. Chris says, all right, you're going to block there, which means I get to do all this, and that's going to do it. Chris Andersen's going to win this match here over Evan Vetter. 2-0. Green-Red Devotion going to take care of Chromanta Flare for Andersen. He moves on to 5-1. He's well on his way here on day number 1 of Indianapolis.
Evan's deck is pretty sweet, and I'm sure that some of these openings involving Soul Flare and Chromanticore are really hard for beatdown strategies to beat, but those cards aren't particularly good against Chris. And with Evan not being appreciably fast, appreciably disruptive, or appreciably powerful in the context of what Chris is doing, both games felt like it was only a matter of time before Chris muscled them out of the game.
That's what happened both games.
Yep.
The Chromanta Flare deck is pretty sweet to watch in action, though, so that was certainly a delight. But at the end of the day, Green Red Devotion gets it done.
Listen, Evan's deck is really cool, and I hope that he makes a deep run in the tournament. He's 4-2 right now, looking at probably a 2-1 to get into the second day, but that matchup felt pretty challenging.
Yeah, for sure.